He was just a maintenance worker, grease under his nails, rent due by morning. She was the billionaire CEO of Chevron Lagos. Too powerful to be lonely, too proud to admit it. When Elizabeth summoned Teniola to her office with an offer that broke every rule. "Give me an heir, and I'll give you the world." He knew this deal would change more than his life. It would test his soul. The sound of dripping water was steady, almost rhythmic. Teniola pressed a wrench against the leaking joint until the metal screamed, then twisted again. The pipe stopped bleeding. Steam rose into the gray Lagos morning, mixing with the smell of diesel and sweat. His shirt clung to his back. His hands were slick with grease. The foreman's voice cracked through the yard. "Maintenance, your shift ended an hour ago." Teniola didn't look up. The pipe didn't. It was easier to argue with metal than with life. A vibration buzzed in his pocket. Cheap phone, cracked screen. A text from the hospital. Sees fever rising again. He exhaled slowly, counted his breaths the way the nurses told him to. Bills stacked higher than his courage, and still he kept counting. By the time he wiped his face and walked toward the locker room, the city was awake. Horns, vendors, smoke from breakfast fires curling into the sky. Lagos didn't care who you were, it only cared if you kept moving. At the gate, a black SUV waited where no SUV should have been. A driver in a dark suit stepped out. "Mr. Teniola Adewale?" Teniola hesitated. "Who's asking?" "Chevron, headquarters. The CEO requests your presence." He laughed under his breath. "You sure you've got the right Teniola?" The man simply opened the back door. "Ma'am said you'd say that." Chevron's glass tower rose like a mirror pretending to be a building. Inside, everything was quiet, air-conditioned, too clean to be real. His boots squeaked against marble as the elevator climbed, each floor number glowing like a countdown. When the doors opened, he saw her before she spoke. Elizabeth Harris. Blonde hair pulled tight, navy suit sharper than truth. A woman used to gravity bending for her. She didn't shake his hand. She gestured to the chair across her desk. "Sit, Mr. Adewale." He obeyed, wiping his palms on his coveralls. "I've read your file," she said. 4 years without a single safety incident. Responsible. Private. Unattached." He frowned. "Is this about a promotion?" "No," she said softly. "Something different." Her assistant closed the door, leaving silence thick enough to breathe in. Elizabeth leaned forward, elbows on glass. "I need an heir, Mr. Adewale. Discretion guaranteed. Compensation generous." He blinked, certain he'd misheard. "An heir?" "I'm not looking for romance or scandal," she continued. "Just genetics. A clean transaction." He stared at the skyline behind her, neon bleeding through rain clouds. "You could have anyone." "I don't want anyone. I want control." The words landed like stones in his chest. She slid a folder across the desk. Inside, non-disclosure forms, a medical clause, a number that could erase every bill he'd ever see. "Why me?" "You look like someone who keeps promises," she said. His throat tightened. Images of say, hospital sheets, IV drips, unpaid receipts flashed behind his eyes. Elizabeth waited, calm as a surgeon. "You don't have to answer now." He stood, voice dry. "You'll get one anyway." She watched him reach the door. "Think about it, Mr. Adewale. How much is a man's conscience worth?" He didn't answer, but the question followed him all the way down the mirrored elevator, echoing with every descending floor. The hospital smelled like bleach and fear. Teniola sat beside Say's bed, counting the seconds between each beep of the monitor. His younger brother's chest rose weakly, as if even air was getting too expensive. The nurse glanced at him with that practiced pity, the kind you give to people who can't pay. "The antibiotics?" he asked. She shook her head. "Until payment clears, we can't release another dose." He nodded without arguing. Arguing didn't heal anything. When his phone vibrated again, it wasn't the hospital this time. It was a message stamped with an address. Chevron Headquarters. 9 a.m. Confirmation required. He closed his eyes. For a second, he almost deleted it. But when he looked at Say's trembling hand, choice became illusion. The next morning, Lagos traffic looked like punishment. By the time he reached the tower, the same driver from before was waiting. No words, just a nod toward the elevator. Elizabeth's office looked unchanged, but she wasn't alone now. 2 lawyers in tailored suits sat beside her. A third person, a woman in a lab coat, arranged papers on the table. "Mr. Attawale," Elizabeth said evenly, "if you've reconsidered, we'll proceed with the terms." He stared at the contract. "This isn't reconsidering," he said quietly. "It's surrender." Her lips twitched, half a smirk, half something unreadable. Even surrender can buy freedom. The top page listed numbers that made his throat tighten. Enough to pay every debt, cure every illness, rebuild his family's life from the ground up. Below that, rules. No media contact, no personal attachment, no disclosure under penalty of imprisonment. And one final clause, termination voids payment. He picked up the pen. His hand shook. Then he signed. Elizabeth stood, signaling the lawyers to leave. "Dr. Chen will arrange medical testing," she said. The woman in the lab coat handed him a small envelope with a schedule. DNA compatibility, health screenings, psychological evaluation. Her tone made it sound like routine maintenance, not humanity. As the room emptied, silence returned. Elizabeth circled her desk slowly, standing just behind him. "You don't have to be afraid, Teniola." He looked up. "Fear isn't the problem. Remembering who I am might be." She studied him for a long moment, then said softly, "Don't. It'll make this harder." That night, the first payment hit his account. The hospital called within minutes. "Funds received," the nurse said, her tone suddenly gentle. "Treatment begins tonight." He should have felt relief. Instead, it tasted like defeat. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. He sat on the narrow balcony of his small apartment, contract folder on his lap, raindrops hitting the paper until the ink bled slightly. He thought of Say sleeping under clean sheets for the first time in weeks. He thought of Elizabeth's eyes, steady, calculating, almost kind. Then he whispered into the storm, "Freedom isn't always freedom, is it?" But the rain didn't answer. Only the echo of his signature did, still wet on the page. The penthouse didn't smell like a home. It smelled like new money and untouched furniture. Too clean, too cold. Teniola stood near the glass wall, Lagos glittering below like a sea of restless stars. Somewhere in that chaos his brother was recovering. Somewhere people were living honestly. He envied them. Elizabeth entered quietly, her heels soft on the marble. No makeup tonight, just a black silk robe that looked more like armor than seduction. She set down 2 glasses of water and a small silver box. "You're nervous?" He didn't deny it. "I'm not used to being property." Her gaze flicked to him, sharp but not cruel. "You're not property, Mr. Attawale. You're part of a plan." He almost laughed. "Plans like this don't end clean." "Neither do lives like yours," she said simply, sitting across from him. "We both do what we must." For a moment, neither spoke. The thunder outside filled the silence between them, washing the glass in electric white. A doctor arrived first, followed by 2 quiet assistants. Their presence made everything feel mechanical, like an operation rather than a union. Blood samples, health reports, signed waivers. Elizabeth signed last, her hand steady as a queen. When the doctor left, the air changed. Elizabeth turned off the overhead lights, leaving only the skyline glow seeping through the glass. She walked to him slowly, her voice low but stripped of pretense. "You can leave any time, but if you stay, There's no pretending, no acting. He studied her, not as a CEO, but as a woman carrying the exhaustion of power. For the first time, he saw the loneliness behind the empire. "I don't want pity," she said. "And I don't sell it," he replied. Her breath caught slightly, maybe surprise, maybe something deeper. She poured a glass of water and handed it to him. "Then let's stop talking." Later, the storm outside raged harder, rattling the windows like applause from the city itself. The world beyond disappeared. Only two people left, stripped of armor, both too proud to admit they were scared. When it was over, she didn't reach for him. She simply lay still, eyes tracing the ceiling like it could explain what they'd just done. He sat at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at his hands, hands that fixed pipes, not destinies. After a long silence, she said quietly, "You think less of me now." He shook his head. "No, I just finally understand how power looks when it's cornered." That made her turn to him, something fragile flickering across her face. "And what do you see?" "A woman who's traded peace for control," he said. She didn't answer, just pulled the sheet higher, her face unreadable again. When he left her room, the city was still storming. He stepped into the hallway, buttoning his shirt, his reflection caught in the mirrored wall. For a moment, he didn't recognize himself, just another ghost walking through borrowed light. By the time he reached the elevator, his phone buzzed, a new message. From Elizabeth Harris. Text, "Tomorrow, 8 a.m., medical confirmation. Do not be late." The elevator doors slid shut, his reflection splitting in two. One man leaving, another taking his place. Morning came without color. The sun barely touched the city, but the news already had. Rumors, whispers, names that should never be spoken together. Elizabeth Harris, the untouchable CEO of Chevron Lagos, had canceled her board meeting without warning. Investors were calling. Directors panicked. The empire could smell a secret before it saw one. Teniola waited outside her private medical suite, silent. The air conditioning hummed. The nurse wouldn't meet his eyes. Behind the frosted glass door, Elizabeth's voice was low, steady, controlled. She'd learned how to command even while bleeding. When the door opened, Dr. Chen stepped out, clipboard trembling slightly. "It's confirmed," she said to Elizabeth. Then, softer, to Teniola, "You may go." He looked at Elizabeth. Her eyes held no surprise, only certainty. "You planned this," he said. "I orchestrated it," she corrected. "Planning implies luck. I don't use luck." His jaw tightened. "So it worked." It did. The words fell like coins on marble. Later that day, she summoned him to her office again. Same glass, same silence. But the power dynamic had shifted. Subtle, invisible, dangerous. Elizabeth stood by the window, the skyline behind her. "Your payment will continue monthly," she said, not turning. "I've arranged housing near the hospital for your brother. You'll both be taken care of." Taniola's voice was quiet. "And what happens to me?" She turned, finally, her tone flat. "You exist quietly. No press, no visitors. If anyone asks, you never met me." He let out a short laugh, bitter, hollow. "So I'm just a rumor you can erase." Elizabeth's gaze flickered, half warning, half regret. "A rumor that saved my future." He took a step closer. "You think you own me now?" "No," she said almost gently. "I think you understand me now." That stopped him, because maybe she was right. He did understand her. A woman who'd built an empire brick by brick, only to realize it couldn't give her the one thing she couldn't command: continuity. The elevator ride down felt longer this time. When he reached the street, Lagos was alive again. Vendors shouting, engines choking, music spilling from bars. He walked past it all like a ghost until his phone buzzed again. A video message from Say. His little brother was smiling for the first time in months. IV tubes gone. sunlight hitting his face through the hospital window. "Bro," Say said, voice weak but happy. "The doctor said I'll be home soon. Whatever you did, thank you." Tiniola stood frozen in the middle of the street, cars blaring around him. Relief hit him first, then guilt, then something heavier than both. Silence. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, whispering to himself, "No one gets saved for free." Back in her penthouse, Elizabeth stood alone, hand resting lightly over her abdomen. The city lights shimmered below, but her reflection looked tired, almost human. Her assistant entered quietly. "Ma'am, the board is asking for a statement." She didn't move her eyes from the glass. "Tell them the company's future is secure." When the assistant left, Elizabeth exhaled, long, slow, fragile. She whispered into the glass, almost like a prayer, "Let it be worth the cost." The city never slept, but tonight it was holding its breath. Chevron's headquarters glowed like a fortress of light against the Lagos skyline, while social media boiled over with rumors. A blurry photograph had surfaced online. Elizabeth Harris exiting a private clinic with an unknown man. The internet did what it always did, turned speculation into story. By midnight, a Chevron heir trended across every platform. Elizabeth read the headline twice before setting her phone down. She didn't blink, but her reflection in the window did. The woman in the glass looked cornered. Her phone buzzed again, this time an internal call. "Board emergency at 7 a.m., her assistant said, voice shaking. "They're demanding answers." Elizabeth simply replied, "Prepare the conference room and make sure security knows who not to let in." Across town, Taniola's phone was blowing up for a different reason. Messages from coworkers, old neighbors, even a few journalists. "Bro, is that you in the photo?" He didn't reply. He sat at Say's bedside instead, staring at the hospital monitor that now beeped in perfect rhythm. The sound used to calm him. Tonight, it mocked him. Say stirred awake. "You're famous, huh?" Taniola forced a smile. "Don't believe everything you see." "Then tell me what's real," Say said softly. Taniola didn't answer. He just reached out and switched off the phone. The room returned to silence, the kind that demands truth. The next morning, security stopped him at the tower gate. "Ms. Harris isn't taking visitors." He flashed the access card she'd once given him. "She will today." The guards hesitated, then let him through. Inside the boardroom, Elizabeth stood before a half-circle of executives. Men old enough to remember when the company was oil and sweat, not secrets and scandals. "You've jeopardized our reputation," one of them barked. "If this rumor continues—" "It's not a rumor," Elizabeth said calmly. "It's a decision." The room erupted. Voices overlapping, accusations flying. "Do you realize the optics? You think shareholders will trust—" "I didn't ask for trust," she interrupted. "I asked for silence." The doors opened. Every head turned. Teniola stepped in. The boardroom froze, suits against grease-stained work clothes. Two worlds colliding in one breath. One of the directors hissed, "Who authorized him here?" Elizabeth's eyes met Teniola's. "I did." He stopped halfway across the room. "You don't have to protect me." "I'm not," she said. "I'm protecting the truth." She turned back to the board, her voice level. "This man saved my life once, and indirectly the company's. You want a scandal? Fine, but you'll tell the world the truth. That power without conscience is the real disease." Silence thickened like fog. Finally, one executive muttered, "You've lost control, Elizabeth." She smiled faintly. Control was always an illusion. Taniola said nothing. He just watched her. The woman who'd built an empire out of iron was now standing in open rebellion against it. When he followed her out of the room, neither spoke. The hallway stretched endless and bright ahead of them like a path neither could walk back. For the first time since signing that contract, Teniola felt something dangerous and unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not guilt, not shame. Freedom. Lagos moved on like it always did. The news cycle devoured its own noise. One week, Elizabeth Harris was a scandal. The next, she was a legend again. Her board survived, the company's stock rebounded, and the story slowly became a myth whispered by those who envied her power. But behind the glass towers, something had changed forever. Teniola didn't return to the refinery. He couldn't. His name had been quietly removed from the company's roster, a ghost erased for convenience. He spent his mornings at the hospital instead, watching Say learn to walk again. The boy's laugh filled the sterile halls with life, and, for a moment, the world felt right again. Then, one afternoon, a car stopped outside the hospital. Black, tinted, familiar. Elizabeth stepped out. No security, no entourage, just her, in a white blouse and dark sunglasses that didn't hide the exhaustion on her face. "You shouldn't be here," Teniola said quietly. "Neither should you," she replied. "But we both are." They walked through the courtyard in silence. Children ran between the benches, the smell of disinfectant mixing with rain. "Why come?" he finally asked. "Because hiding doesn't erase what's real," she said, "and I'm done hiding." He studied her face. No boardroom mask now, no armor. Just a woman stripped down to truth. "So, what happens next?" Elizabeth hesitated. "I leave Lagos. The board is pushing me out. Too much noise, too much reputation to manage. But before I go—" She paused, reaching into her coat. "There's something you should see." She handed him a small envelope. Inside, an ultrasound photo. The kind of image that humbles even the strongest men. Teniola's breath caught. He looked up at her, disbelief flickering across his face. "It's real?" She nodded once. 8 weeks. Silence. Only the sound of rain tapping metal railings. He didn't know what to feel. Pride? Fear? Wonder? The contract had felt like a cage, but this was something neither of them could control. Elizabeth spoke again, voice softer now. "I don't want your money, Teniola. I don't even want forgiveness. I just needed you to know that this, whatever it is, wasn't just a transaction." He stared at the ultrasound again, thumb brushing over the faint curve of the image. "It stopped being a transaction the moment you bled," he said. That made her look away, eyes glistening. Not from weakness, but the kind of strength that comes too late. A few weeks later, she boarded a plane out of Lagos. No press, no goodbyes, just the quiet hum of engines and a city disappearing beneath clouds. She placed a hand over her stomach and whispered to no one, "Let it be worth it." In another part of the city, Teniola walked his brother home from the hospital, the sun dipping low over the rooftops. He stopped once, looking toward the skyline, the same tower still standing, proud and hollow. His brother nudged him. "You okay?" Teniola smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think I am." He didn't know if he'd ever see her again, but he knew one thing for sure. Some debts aren't meant to be paid back. They're meant to be lived through. A closing shot of Lagos at dusk, lights flickering across the city, rain soft on glass, and one envelope resting on Teniola's table under a single bulb, the ultrasound glowing faintly in the dark. Some deals are written in ink, others in blood, and both leave a mark,